Very good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. If you're enjoying this on your tablet, your phone, your computer, workstation, anywhere around in the world, we are truly in a virtual and live platform at the same time. It is great to be in cyberspace and be to communicate with you live anywhere in the world. This is Rob from The Drunken Grape, and each and every week we have a Success Happy Hour. We feature extraordinary individuals, have extraordinary drinks with them, do the toast, and get into their story of how they became so successful. Today's guest, Charmy, is from Montreal, I believe,
Yes.
Quebec, here in Canada. I'm talking live here in Ottawa. Charmy, originally from the Philippines or of Filipino descent, has done tremendous things in Canada. I believe she has a strong banking ground, so 20 years in banking, but parlayed all of that expertise into the world of real estate. And in uncertain economic times, yes, real estate is overinflated and bloated in Canada right now, but if you're willing to step out of that threshold and look at the international markets, there's some tremendous buying opportunities across the globe. And it's a physical asset. It is a form of real wealth, like owning physical bullion. Charmy, welcome to the show. How are you? It's great to have you here. And I got to thank Francois Lanthier for introducing us. He has brought a bevy of great guests to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Yeah, Francois is connected.
He definitely is. So talk to us a little bit about how you got started. I mean, it's an interesting journey, especially being a woman of ethnicity in Canada. I mean, I still believe that there's probably some certain inherent barriers in certain segments of society, especially if you get into Quebec and the white parts of French Quebec, that there are challenges in business. There's no doubt about this. But you've done really well in this space. I think Francois mentioned you have scores of properties and have done really, really well. In fact, you probably could retire today if you wanted to. How'd you get started in this journey? What got you to tick? What got you to move in this direction?
Yeah, so I would say my journey actually started from a dark place, Rob. A few years ago, my sister was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer at 40. So it was such a shock because she was a very healthy person.
Obviously, she didn't make it. I lost my twin sister almost 4 years ago now to that disease.
I'm so sorry.
Exact. So, yeah, I mean, but this obviously drove you, right?
Yeah, it took me a while to get over it, because you see when you see a person you love so much suffer like that, it traumatizes you. It really does. And it's a tough disease, cancer. There's no respite. I saw her from, like losing her hair to being super tired. And I remember, the time she gave her car to my mom because she couldn't drive anymore. She takes away your independence as well. And I remember that day when my brother-in-law called me and he was like, Charmy, you have to go to the hospital. She's not going to make it today. She's not going to make it today. And I remember that long drive, and God bless the doctor that was there, Rob, because he stayed for a few hours, giving us directions because we didn't know what to do. He was saying, like, talk to your sister. She can still hear you. Play music that she loves. She can still hear that. And, she didn't make it. And she passed away very close to my birthday. And I remember, instead of, going to see her celebrating my birthday, I was planning her funeral. And it really, really changed my perspective in life. And for a few years, I was really barely surviving because, I couldn't hear and feel all these things I went through, like watching her go through that. And it also, at some point, I really said, what am I doing with my life? There's this person who suffered so much just to live another day. And I was happy in banking. I was in banking for 20 years. It was, banking is a very good job in Canada as an immigrant. Because, I came here when I was 13 in the middle of winter, Rob, in February, minus 35.
Wow. Must probably
I had no boots because obviously.
Yeah, that's a shock.
Yeah. And we landed in Quebec, which obviously I didn't speak French yet. So it was an interesting journey to say the least. And I remember like at some point when I was, getting better, I was listening to this woman. She was talking about real estate. She's like, "Oh, I know, I built this real estate empire. I started at this age." And I'm like, that's really interesting because at the beginning of my career at the bank, I was actually doing mortgages. I just never invested myself. I was just dealing with clients. I'm like, you know what? I learned about it. And I really loved learning about it. I took so many courses and then I became part of the community in real estate and I learned all these different things you can do. So from zero real estate in 2 years, I went from 0 to 40 doors.
Wow, I would love to learn how to do that because that's sort of in the impetus of where I would like to go in the next few steps. But wow, great. That's awesome. And I can relate because my twin sister died much the same way. Metastasized. She actually beat cancer the first time around, and 18 months later, it came roaring back from stage 2 and 3. She had health problems her whole life. Out of the two of us, she was the one that couldn't lift her arms over her head from 13 on. They didn't know what it was. We thought it was a form of muscular dystrophy. It wasn't. Nobody really knew what caused it, but she suffered. And she suffered with jaw problems because of weak muscles around the neck, had to go through an orthodontist to shift her jaw. And then, of course, she just would be sick pretty regularly. My brother and I were healthy and strong. And to see her whittle away changed me too. I mean, it took a lot of time. In some ways, I'm still getting over it. I'm actually into a grief and loss counseling course, partly because of this. It triggers a lot of other trauma that you've suffered when something is so traumatic. But use it to fuel you to make you better. I think this is part of embracing grief because the hole is always going to be there. You have to find things that would make them smile upon you, if that makes sense. I know that we've encountered much a similar fate with somebody that went and passed way before their time. My sister was 47 at the time. It was under 2 months from our 49th or 48th birthday, rather, at the time she passed. So kudos to you to step up and out. I'm starting to really gain the strength and vigor now. I thought I had it, but I didn't. It's now the real strength and vigor is coming where, yes, I've built up this business, The Drunken Grape, started with some virtual events. Big shout out to people if they want excellent live tasting parties with engagement on wine and beer and dinner parties. I actually now have an Indigenous component coming along for the Indigenous or Aboriginal dinner party with a master Aboriginal chef or Indigenous chef who's a very good friend of mine.
That's so cool.
But all these things come when you wake up. The time does not wait. And sadly, most people don't care. I hate to tell this to the viewers, but the only people who really care about you is a handful of people that love you on this earth. That is it. Mm-hmm. So use that model to fuel yourself to know that you can do better and things can be brighter. Because at least we have time still. And in this time and in this world where we may have 20, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on tech and health and how you're doing, why squander it for somebody else? And it takes courage to quit a job that you were in for so long. I'm starting to go through some of that process too and looking at other avenues before I jump out fully, but it's coming. And I think, toast to you and cheers to the happy hour. I actually have a beer from Quebec, Blanche de Chambly.
I have something too.
Hey, nice. What is that? What do you have there before we get into this?
It's Bailey's.
Excellent. Awesome. I love it. Splash that. That's just on its own, isn't it? With some ice?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Love it. Coffee. One of my favorite drinks is Bailey's and coffee. Bless the Irish.
It's so good.
But you get into Unibrow. This is Blanche de Chambly. This is a brewery out of Chambly, Quebec, which is not too far away, I believe, from Sherbrooke. It's in that hub. But this is a Belgian-style wheat beer. This is anywhere from 25 or 30% to 50% wheat in the grain bill. The rest would be malted barley. You have to have water, hops, and yeast. The Belgians like to add beet sugar or rock candy to fortify it or add other flavors. They add coriander or other adjuncts. They don't listen to purity laws like the Germans. But this is a world-class beer, and this is one of the best breweries on the planet. right near
Wow.
you. It is now owned by Sapporo Group out of Japan, believe it or not. But cheers to you and a big toast. Belgian Wit,
Cheers.
nice and fruity, effervescent beer. Wonderful notes of clove, banana, bubble gum. This goes really well with salads with things like cranberry, nuts, and goat cheese, drizzled
Oh,
with a
wow.
bit of balsamic vinaigrette or whatnot, or some kind of a raspberry type vinaigrette. Awesome. Anyway,
I'd have to try it.
Yes, you do.
I
This
know
is your
Champlain very
toast.
well because my in-laws are from there.
Cool. Yeah, go visit the Unibrow Brewery. I mean, it's been around since 1992 or 3, or maybe even earlier than that, but it's been around quite a long time. I mean, they have La
Wow.
Fin de Mont. They do a lot of Belgian-style beers. So if you break up Canada, this is a little bit of beer fun and facts. We get into this in tastings. You know, you want to look at sensory. You want to see how this tastes. You want the visual of it. With wine, you want to see, smell, sip, see, swirl, smell, sip, savor. With beer,
Yeah.
you actually want to smell it first because of the sparkling in it. It brings a lot of the flavor notes up the sides of the glass that come out. That's why it's important to drink beer out of a glass. This is the tulip glass of the Prud'homme Certified Beer Sommelier program. I'm actually a certified beer sommelier. It's getting back to that. Geographically speaking, Quebec is all Belgian beer. If you go to the Atlantic provinces, you get more into English and Irish and Scottish styles. If you go into Ontario, you have a hodgepodge of a bit of everything, but there's a huge influence coming up from the East Coast of the United States. If you go west, it's IPA land, and we're heavily influenced by the whole West Coast brewing movement and craft brewing operations that are heavily affected and influenced by what comes out of the States. So you really breaks it down into 4 different quadrants. Quebec, of course, always being closest to Europe, and they produce some brilliant beer in Quebec. Quebec is awesome when it comes to brewing. Amongst other things, I always find culinary, like in your city in Montreal, is fabulous too. But a toast to
Yes.
you about that journey. So let's get into it. You shifted gears from banking. So you had different, we talked in the green room. Tell the guests what different portfolios you had in banking and how you leveraged this expertise into the world of real estate today, where you now have 40 different doors and now you're expanding internationally. I mean, this is great.
Yeah, honestly, 20 years, I did like, I think 8 different jobs at the bank. I really wanted to learn the banking system, the Canadian banking system. So I was in marketing, HR, I did mortgages, I did financial advisor, I did manager customer service. And at the end of my career, I was in the brokerage side, which is the financial market, stock market. And I think, honestly, when I started investing in real estate, it was good to have both sides of the coin. When I was trying to
Yeah.
get mortgages from other banks, I'm like, I remember that when I was doing mortgages.
It gives you insights.
And also, yeah, and I also had the patience because I know the relationship between mortgage specialists and underwriters and what things you can ask for, what you can negotiate. Because people don't think you can negotiate. You can negotiate with your mortgage specialist. And I was used to that environment and actually like talking to the different types of banking system because I was at TD, but even though we're all federally regulated, they all had their special things that they like to have. And if you know that, and that's why I say when people ask me how they go from 0 to 40 doors, and I always say the magic is in the financing. If you know how the financing puzzle works, it's a lot easier to plan it. And you always give them what they want. I always say, ask them what, you have to know what they want. If you give them what they want, they're going to approve you. It's going to go so much faster.
So what steps do they usually want? I'm curious. Obviously, a high credit rating.
Yes.
Obviously, what, 780 and above?
Yeah, well, 700 and above is very good. You can still get 600. We just have to explain why it is. I find the credit score, it's good, but there's other things they look at. They like job stability, Rob. That's the way that, they like secure things. So if you've been in your job for a long time, they like to see that.
Yep.
They like to see if you have other relationships with the bank. If you have other products with them, they'll actually give you more leeway if they know you've been a client with them for a long time.
That's true. If you have an RSP account, a TFSA, even if you don't have any of that, you just hold stocks in TD Waterhouse in this case, they're going to look at all of that because that portfolio is on file.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And you can move more money in there. And if you want to just make it look better, you can shift money a year out of asking for a mortgage kind of thing so that they know it's been parked there for a while. I'm starting to see the picture now. I know that paying down your debts and your debt ratio is a good thing too.
Very important.
In order to get out of a lot of consumer debt, you can wrap that into a mortgage too. Can you not, after a certain point, pay way less interest on it and get you out faster?
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense because the mortgage interest is usually the lowest because it's with an asset, right? So they always recommend getting your interest in your mortgage or a home equity line of credit. You're going to save so much more money, for sure.
Yeah, and these are things that a lot of people don't know of. I mean, I didn't realize. I mean, there's an older couple I know I'm not really close with anymore at all. You might know them. I think it's Danielle St. Jean and Lauren. But they got into the game very late. Like, Daniel's in his 70s. She's probably pushing close to 70. And I would say they got into this game only a handful of years ago, maybe 7-8 years ago. And I think they're already on a path now that they don't have to worry about their retirement anymore all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I think that got cemented. And it's also about having the guts and the gusto to do it. I mean, what other steps are key? So we covered the financing. That's obviously the pillar. Have products with the bank, have a good relationship for the while with the bank. Obviously deal with your home bank first, or a bank that you've built up a trust with over time. What other advice and tidbits do you have?
I would say, and this is funny because before I started looking at real estate, Rob, I tried to look at different jobs because I didn't want to retire at 65. Look for something that's interested that you have an interest in already. So if you're interested in real estate, that's the first step because you're going to need to have that. And I started building my real estate portfolio when it was a crazy market, 2020 and 2021, where the offers were like 30, 40 offers in the same building.
Yeah, and people are way overbidding.
You need that patience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Any advice on buying? Like, is it good to buy on stress when a divorce is happening between a couple and what they want to, I hate to say it, but for lack of a better word, they want to screw each other on the value of it because one person wants to pay out the other person less who controls the finances. This happens all the time. Or inheritance. You know, somebody inherits a house and you have the asshole brother or sister in the party that wants to sell and squeeze and get their money right away. Often there's always one that's not nearly as well off, but not nearly as patient as the others either. So it forces values down. Would you not say those are good buying opportunities too on good housing?
Yeah, definitely. The more you know about the property and the owner.
So the insights, right? So you have financing. Yes. We got insights into the ownership. Any other plays? I think like it's always good to have three things people can take away. So we got the financing, understanding the owner, understanding the seller. Yes. And what would be the other one that you would really think of as a basic?
I would say build a lot of good relationships with accountants, lawyers, notaries, inspectors, mortgage specialists, all those, because they're going to help you build your business properly. And it's a business. That's the thing people sometimes forget. When you're investing in real estate, physical real estate, it's a real business. You're a business owner. You have to make sure everything works very well. It's going to go as well as how well you're building your business, or it could go badly as well. So definitely have all those people because you can't do it alone. You need all these people to build that great business.
Yeah, you need the home inspector, you need the realtor, you need the lawyer for sure. My brother-in-law is a really good lawyer. He owns Wilson Associates, Brian Wilson. Big shout out to him here in Ottawa. He's a juggernaut in that piece of business. And he mentions that a lot. He said, just have it all lined up. If you've got a couple key people lined up, it's not so hard. You're at least going to get a fair value property with minimal problems. You're not going to come in there and all of a sudden the foundation has a crack or the roof is leaking and it wasn't addressed by the builders or the owners. This is stuff that it's damning. Listen, I've got my brother-in-law and my sister in London, England are living with their in-laws right now, and they own a house outright in England. So you imagine how much that's worth to own a house in London outright.
Yeah, I can.
But imagine these old row houses, these Edwardian homes, and a toilet breaks on the top level, what that does to the walls and the rest of the building.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be covered. They're in a fight with insurance, but I guarantee there's probably something that was hidden there from the sale of that house when they bought it years prior. Like, I'm not sure how it works in England, but home inspectors, a good home inspector would pick up that stuff.
Yeah.
What about the contracting world? I
It's
mean,
their
it's always good to
expertise.
know. It is. And what about builders? Like, what about people who do renovations, flooring, plumbing, electrical? I imagine these are critical to know too.
Yeah, for sure, because you're buying a physical property, you have to maintain it, right? So you need all the tradespeople, and you need to build good relationship. And it's funny, Rob, I find sometimes people take that for granted. And I hear it sometimes from people who are like, it's so easy to work with you. Everything is organized and you understand the, the challenges. It's like, that should be like the basic skill because that's people skills. They want to like to work with you as well, because you're going to need to work with them all the time. It's a business. It's especially when you're scaling to like 40 doors. It's a full-time job sometimes.
Yeah, and you're going to want that separated in a holding company away from you too. Incorporate and have that all tucked away from your direct name as well, because it protects you and it protects the business and it protects the interests. And it protects those that now work for you or with you.
Exactly.
I mean, that's something I do understand in the business dynamic. It's like Andrew Carnegie. We're going all the way back now. Carnegie and Rockefeller, vertical and horizontal integration. So It's like me in the wine world. So I went in, started my sommelier training. I was bartending, started from mixology. I was actually owned an IT company, had a partner who was a drunk, ripped me off a lot of money, ripped off a lot of people. So I left that. And unfortunately, that's a piece of business that's very hard to unsettle. You can win in court 10,000 times over, but somebody in that likelihood is just going to go bankrupt on you or bankrupt again. They'll walk away with your money. It's an unsecured debt. And that's the plight of that type of wealth building. Real estate's a fixed asset. If you got a partner that's trying to run away from you, it's like, oh no, I'm coming after your fixed assets now, and they can't do it. So that's a good hedge of protection for what you're in. But getting back to horizontal vertical integration, basically what you want to do is branch tall and branch wide. You want to branch into everything associated directly in a vertical line and everything that is associated indirectly or not directly, but has an influence on your business outcomes. And it's like me in the wine world. So I moved into beer. Beer is a branch off wine. One was from bartending the wine to beer, and then you start talking to suppliers, you start talking to winemakers, you start talking to brewers and vintners, and you get to know these people, some people in key government associations that lobby the government and alcohol in the alcoholic beverage space. And it's basically you just continually build this network up as you build and grow. You get into working with chefs, you get to work with, that's a key fundamental right there. It's all very important to tie into everyone that's related to what you're doing.
Yeah, you have to be part of that community.
So, you're right. And again, what bravery to do this. How long has it been since your sister passed? Because obviously this had a profound mark on you moving forward.
It's going to be 7 years this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and good for you. You realize then that this is not – I'm in the same situation a little later in the game, but –
it's okay. Reading is very personal.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of these things that why spend the rest of your life as an employee if you don't have to? Because I don't want to use a term that it's a form of slavery, but unless you're in some cushy government bureaucratic job, it is a form of slavery in today's age.
Yeah.
Somebody dangles a carrot around you, and some of the biggest bullying and abuse that still exists is in the workplace. People feel trapped. They feel isolated. Real estate's a great way to get out of it. As I pour myself a bit more beer here to enjoy that with you. I mean, it's what a great way to build wealth. It's a real asset. It's a pure form of asset. Property, as Mark Twain always said, there's always going to be more people and less property. It's like gold and silver. Gold and silver is real money because there's a finite supply of it. They cannot print this, and they cannot just create it out of thin air like a paper note or a digital currency. I mean, crypto is based upon what technological problems and solution it solves, the solutions it gives. That's where the wealth sits. But it has to have something tangible, and that's its tangible side. Bullion is obvious. I mean, and I think I actually have one in my pocket, you pull out a silver coin, that is real and tangible anywhere you go on the planet.
Yeah.
It's like housing. Everyone needs a roof over their head. Everyone needs a safe place to sleep. Now, half the world doesn't have it, but the supply of it is something that is essential to the core of humanity. And barring governments outright stealing your property away from you, in which case the country is under total dictatorship and nobody wants to live there.
And you have bigger problems.
It's something that, you got bigger problems like saving your life. It is a foundation of wealth. Absolutely true. Is there any other parts you want to impart? I mean, you've given some great advice today, some great basics. You've opened my eyes more to this as a possibility of building your economic future. What are your thoughts of buying internationally and globally? That's a booming market in certain spots.
Yeah, definitely. And I only got into that, I would say, a year ago. I think once you know that you like real estate, it makes sense to look elsewhere because you're not confined to one specific country. And Canada is very tax heavy. That's the one thing that I don't really like with Canada. And I know because I pay all my taxes. So
yeah, it's insane. It's robbery here. It's actually theft at this level of taxation. For what we're getting is theft. It's outright theft.
Yeah, taxation is heavy.
Money's being siphoned to buy political influence by the people on the Hill. It's out of touch with what Canadians really want, especially the last 8 years. Helping the middle class and those that want to join it. Tagline by our current prime minister is a laughing stock because that has not happened. People, I mean, what is it? 60% of Canadians live paycheck to paycheck or are on the verge of insolvency right now. And a lot of this is to do with the fact that you're ripping off at minimum 33% on income alone before they even see their pay, which is insanity. And I would agree with you. Canada's a strong country in a lot of other ways, but on an economic freedom scale, it ranks very low in the West. I know it ranks anywhere 19 to 20 to 21st between free and mostly free, but all the countries ahead of it are all Western countries. I mean, they're all countries like Sweden, for instance, that you would think would have less freedom, have way more. Countries like Ireland have tremendous economic freedom, actually. Like if you go to Dublin, it has huge benefits, and apparently it's like Montreal. It's a city that doesn't sleep. It's a ton of fun. You got to deal with the weather, so that's why you get a home in Costa Rica like you have or Francois has done, and what my girlfriend and I are looking to do. But you really do have to weigh the options, and it's about what you want to do. As Mahatma Gandhi says, be the change you want to be and you want to see in this world. But that change starts with you. And that's the message I've got to leave you with, the viewers. You've been a tremendous guest, Charmy. We met just in the green room. Your referral, this conversation clicked better than expected by far. It exceeded my expectations wildly. You've been a tremendous guest. I'm definitely going to have you back to talk more in depth about what you're doing next. I know that you've got your hands into the entrepreneurial world now. Welcome to my space, in the sense of entrepreneurship. You will find undivided love and freedom on this part of the employment picture.
I'm going to have to chat with you on entrepreneurship. I'm going to take away all your information.
Yep. How to protect your assets, how to trademark, copyright, incorporating, all that stuff. It's crucial. And listen, you've been a tremendous guest. Much love to you. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever you decide to do, have a terrific day. This is Rob and Charmy from The Drunken Great.
Thank you, Rob.